Since Adam and Eve, peace be upon them, relationships have always been a catalyst for building our faith. So the real question is, are you being held back? Lack of willpower and negative relationships have shackled many of us. It cannot be emphasized how much our friends, family and community can limit our horizons, prevent us uncovering our God-given potential. And so when we say Islam is a healing, are we learning Islam within a family context? Whether you plan to get married or on the verge of a divorce or want to level up your goals as a couple, the family program can be the turning point for everlasting relationships. Learn and cultivate thankfulness and forbearance mindsets to become a positive influence to yourself and others. Eventually, you will build a growth mindset that will leave you never looking back as you venture forward to a new life. The family program. Learn, heal, grow.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Project Barakah podcast. Did I just say podcast? Podcast. And the topic today is time and money for anything but Deen. Now, let's break that title down a bit because I think it's a bit much. It's a bit heavy, right? What we mean by it is how we look at having barakah in our time, right? Because in the end, the amount of time we all have is the same, pretty much. What we need to do in our lives is probably comparable with someone in the same age, demographic, pay bracket as us. So the idea is we're not as different as we make out or that we'd like to think. We all have lots of different kind of varieties of problems, but they tend to be of the different flavors of the same kind of problems, right? And as a result of that, what we find a lot of the time is we've had to undergo a serious kind of uprooting of how we view our time and how we prioritize it for what we want to get. You see, and the aim of this, hopefully, inshallah, is for all of us, with my brother Ustad Ibrahim and my other brother Ustad Mumin, for us to maybe explore some of the kind of changes that you guys have made, right? What changes you have made to accommodate the things you want to achieve. And this is really uncomfortable. I'm going to have to adjust this mid-flow.
I think you had your arm weaved through there.
I did, didn't I?
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's do that. There we go. Now I'm comfortable. Interesting thing, because the most common statement that we hear when we ask people to look, if it's like going online and liking that someone demonstrated, which is a good thing, but if it's liking and supporting that, if it's liking and sharing something that someone has said, that takes a certain level of time commitment. But to genuinely engage in your own life with learning and all of these things, that's where you really have to take up time. Because off the back of our last podcast, a lot of the time people are bored, so they're reacting to things as a way to stave off their boredom and maybe do something nice by supporting someone doing a good thing of some variety, of some type of good. But when it comes to ourselves doing something with our lives, that actually takes a overhaul, a rehauling of our current schedules, our current life patterns or daily routines,
100%.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So we want to get this straight. When we say time for Deen, what do we mean? What we mean is,
That's all right there.
I'm not going to intentionally rhyme. I might unintentionally rhyme, right?
And I'll appreciate it.
Yeah, right. So we need to think how when we talk about Deen, we're talking about the actions you undertake in helping the ummah, okay, building a nation, uniting the ummah. Now we want to backpedal from that for a moment to say, well, that has certain expectations and assumptions. It has expectations that you know what you're talking about, and assumptions that you're currently living on what you are learning and talking about. And that means that you probably have some pursuance of Deen in terms of learning, studying. And I don't mean checking the internet. I don't mean watching off a podcast and thinking that, I've learned. To this day, none of us would give our car nor our children to a doctor or an engineer. Switch that around the other way around. We wouldn't do that, okay? If they said, don't worry, I've watched a bunch of YouTube videos, I promise, do you see? We wouldn't do that, because we know that when you are learning from clips on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, it is unfettered. So that means the information you're getting is not checked. A lot of the time people are sharing things that are not true. And that's within the Islamic area. Then you have, when you think you've understood something, no one's verifying and examining you and checking whether you've understood something correctly, because you don't have a direct connection with the teacher. So when we say time for Deen in our idea for this podcast, I think what's important is time for mentorship and learning from someone in a real kind of real-time sense, meaning you're turning up for a class. That's what we mean. Now, I've heard sometimes the weird and the wonderful excuses come, but generally speaking, I feel like I've heard every excuse known to man, because all my life revolves around people making excuses for why they don't want to change. Meanwhile, they don't understand. I think a lot of the time, instead of saying people are lazy, because we don't want to conclude from this podcast people are lazy. What we want to conclude is that people don't have enough faith to know the benefit that ilm is going to give in their life. They don't think it's going to do anything. They have a sneaky suspicion that it might not have any impact.
Skeptics,
yeah. Right? And that's where you get the kind of commitment issues. That's how you get people coming up with excuses, you see. And so there's lots of things that can be said about that. There's a nice poem. Imam Shafi, he mentions, Na'ibu zamanana wal aibu fina. He says, we blame our times. And our times is interesting because zaman is both, it's both time as waqt, dahr, time. But zaman also means the problem of our times, the fact that everyone's busy and working. And so we blame our times. We say, yeah. So he says, Na'ibu zamanana, we blame our times. Right? وَالْعَيْبُ فِينَا, while the blame is really upon us in terms of how we utilize time. And at the same time, I've never really met people who haven't learnt knowledge, who haven't sought ilm, except when they're really ignorant, right? Compound ignorance is where you think you don't need something and you think you know, and there's that, yeah, jahlul murakkab. My son says jahlul murakkab is too complex. He says, he calls it really dumb. But wherever it is, those people, and they could be people with degrees and master's degrees or whatever, they think that really learning the deen is beneath them. That's one category. But I think generally most people would say that there are problems in their life that need solving, right? And they would accept that the problems can be solved by Islam. And I'll just open the conversation up with a nice poem that might kind of shape the conversation that happens now, where I think it's Mutanabbi, he says, وَاصْبِرْ لِدَائِكَ إِنْ جَفَوْتَ طَبِيبَهُ وَاصْبِرْ لِجَهْلِكَ إِنْ جَفَوْتَ مُعَلِّمًا. He says, be patient with the pains of your illness if you are to push away and repel and you shun the doctor. And it's true. If the doctor is trying to stitch you and you're like saying, get off me, then the doctor is just going to let you he's going to have to sit back and let you bleed, because there's nothing to do with someone who doesn't want to take medication, doesn't want to have anything prescribed, doesn't want to, even when the doctor gives medication, we've all probably come back from hospital at some point somewhere with medication, but it's still your job to take it. You can't just have the medication on your mantelpiece. You have to take it. You have to take it in the proper time, either with a meal or outside of meal times. You have to take it with certain regularity for it to take effect. So a lot of people, they end up in hospital again because the rehabilitation regimen that's been given to him. Maybe it's you have to do certain physio, or you have to take some medication. You don't do the physio, you don't take the medication, you don't change your lifestyle, you go back and you smoke as soon as you come out of the hospital, then the chances are you're going to be back in hospital. Yeah? And the chances are you're going to be back in hospital in a worst state, and probably in A&E, or probably more critical or chronic situation that's taken place. So this is going to just keep happening. The more you ignore, that's why the Mutanabbi says that be patient with the pains of illness, with the suffering that comes with illness, if you are to shun the doctor, if you are to shun good advice, knowledge about health, physical health. And he says, be patient with the pains of ignorance. وَاصْبِرْ لِجَهْلِكَ. Yeah? If you are to shun the teacher, if you think that you're beyond the teacher. You see? So I wanted to first throw it out to kind of understand, why is it that people always think that they're busier than everyone else? Like, usually, it's really simple. If you are as busy as someone else, or someone else is as busy as you, and they are making space for their deen, that means that person has understood that Allah is Al-Razaq. He has understood that Allah is Al-Muhyi wa Mumit. He has understood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Alim and He's Al-Khabir, that He knows your circumstance. He is knowledgeable enough to prescribe you obligations that are good for you. Obligations are good for you, and haram is harmful for you, right? And that He is Ar-Razaq, that He will take care of you, He will provide your rizq nonetheless. One way or another, you are going to get your rizq. And He is someone who knows, what you're going through. He's Al-Khabir. So if you're aware of those things, then the difference is this person has a better connection or more trust with their Lord, and this person doesn't. Now, the difference would be sometimes where some people are less able, I've found, and this is my personal critique of myself, and I probably wanted to start this way anyway, because there's, look in first, that I sometimes assume that people can carry a certain mental load that I can carry, for example, right? It's, for me, I don't think I'm really good at anything really that well. But one thing I'm probably good at is just having a million things go on and just somehow keeping them in my mind and working through them. And, even if I were to hand a portion of it, I see someone going crazy, I think I'll take that back. I can see the impact of that. And this is obviously from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This a way to kind of be lateral, let's say. Yeah? But nonetheless, it's not good thinking on my behalf. It's poor thinking on my behalf if I give a task to someone that they will mentally overload. Do you see? So it's not to do with, do you have the time? Yes. But do you have the mental capacity to fit that within the time? No. So there is a mental capacity issue that we should is to do with either intelligence or mental strength, or to do with all of those things. Headspace. But also you have to look at the other side as well. If we assume that people's headspace and mental health and all of these things need to be considered, we probably need to also assume what they're doing with their current headspace. Do you see? Does that make sense? Like, there are some people who can work at higher level efficiencies than me personally. I know them, I've met them, and I'm impressed. They can work at higher level efficiencies than me. For me, I don't look at, okay, well, they can and I can't. I look at, well, that means I can't afford to maybe waste as much time. It's like, we all know from an academic kind of experience, right? We've all sat exams, and in our exams, we knew that on certain topics, I don't think, like, maybe you had strengths in science or in maths, but those topics you were weak at. You knew that my friend's gliding through, right? I'm not gliding through. So that means when he says to me, do you want to meet up? Or because he's done his revision and he's up and ready. And I'll say, no, I've probably got to stay in. Because I know that I can't enjoy as much. because I have to try harder. And there's things that I don't have to try harder, and he has to try harder. So we will recognize this during exam period. If your weak spot is English and you're good at maths and science, you're going to give it extra attention. If your weak spot is maths, then you're going to spend extra time with maths. You're probably going to get a tuition or a tutor, and you're going to really try to go down that rabbit hole and find out what's going on and really just get yourself exam ready. So people understand this point that something needs to go if I don't take to something easily. So I wanted just to have a rough idea of just what does a working week look like for you? What does a schedule for a week look like for yourself, including, all your learning, dawah activities, or what, and work and family, just a general outline. And I wanted to ask you the same, because people are very interested in not the individual things that you do, but how you do them collectively, because that's the skill, isn't it? That's the hustle. That's really when they talk about hustle mentality, or they call about having grit, or having growth mentalities. All of these terms refer to how you manage to do a lot. It's not to do with how, if a guy told me, you know what, I've studied Quran and I've learned Arabic, etc., and I said, wow, that's amazing, that's really good. Yeah, but I got divorced in the process. I alienated my family, I lost everybody, and I've just got. I say, you joker, what did you do, right? If a person said, I'm in peak health, I remember meeting this brother, and he was in peak health, like really into his fitness and everything. I said, wow, that's amazing. Like, honestly, man, you did that? I'm so impressed. And then it was like, what have you got for work? I'm heading to all my 30s. I haven't had a job yet. I can't be impressed with that, because anything that you dedicate all your life to while you neglect other obligations, and family is an obligation, work is an obligation, right? Your health, and it reminds me of Harun al-Rashid. I think it was Harun al-Rashid. One of the Khulafa Rashida, right? He met this man who could juggle with fiery arrows. He could juggle with fiery arrows, and he heard about it. And people said, "You have to see this guy. I'm telling you, you've not lived, right? Like, you don't know how good it is until you see it." So he went there to, I'll see it. He watched this guy. And then he saw him juggling with fiery arrows or whatever. And then he said, give him a dirham for being really talented, and whip him for wasting his time. Right? Something happened with Umar ibn al-Khattab as well. It's in Hayat al-Sahaba, I think one of those shelves. And a man came up, and they said the Sahabas were telling him he's such an impressive young man, prodigy, child prodigy sort of thing, right? And they thought, Umar al-Khattab said, bring him, let me see him. And he was faqih and very knowledgeable and etc. He said, what do you have as a craft? Craft specifically, what do you do? He said, I don't have any. He said, I'm no longer impressed. Yeah, and that's really important to know that if you don't have a craft, you don't have means of living, then all your other things will be dictated to based on whoever takes care of you. Do you see? So give me a outline.
So to open it up, just to give it a bit of context, I think life and balancing things and fitting time can be hard to try and figure out if no one gives you some guidance, right?
Yeah.
So I remember being at university, and there's the really nice brothers that I met over there, but one brother in particular, Brother Majid, that he really put things in perspective. Imagine you're at university, you're studying, you don't have to think too much about work. But what I would say is, he said, some advice he gave me, he said, your daytime job, if you think of that's most of your time, it's the wrong way to think about it, because that is a means of you earning a certain amount of money. He said, what you do outside of that, that's how you spend your real time, because most of your time is outside of your work. So he said, when he said that, it just got to me to think, actually, yeah, you finish work, you go home, say you're home by 5, 6 o'clock. What you do with that time every day
is who you really are.
It is who you really are, because your day job, those are just tasks that you complete. You get money from, and that provides for your family.
We
to
call
do
it a
such
robot
things.
bit, right?
Yeah.
We have to do it.
So
There's no way out.
with that in mind, when I was looking for a job, and when I was looking for a job, I got offered jobs that were good salaries, but they said you have to work Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
Wow.
and 2 days in the week.
Yeah.
And in my head, I just could not compute. So you want me to give my whole weekend, where that's like free time that you can actually do productive things with, to work for your company, and then I can just take 2 days off in the week. I just wasn't willing to accept that. So I really was thinking about how can I find a job that suits me being able to fit in certain things. And for me, teaching was like something I was passionate about, something I was interested in, and opened up those opportunities to actually say it's a skill first and foremost that I can use in everyday life. I can use it in other ways outside of work. So, when I went into teaching, it meant I've got my weekends free. It also meant school days finish slightly earlier, so our school finishes just before 3:00. There are some things that you have to do, but generally speaking, it means that I've got an idea that, okay, workday finishes and the next task begin. I go home, I've got family to look after, I've got family to provide for.
Earning money funds the life.
Yeah,
So you've funded it now.
yeah.
What life do you want to live, isn't it?
And the other thing is, from university, what I took was your purpose is greater than your job that you do. Life is more than about working and going on holiday and coming back. So I knew that there's an element of dawah I wanted to continue on. There's an element of studying I wanted to carry on, because I knew I'm leaving this bubble.
So how many times, for the purposes of our viewers, like, some of it I've dragged you into as well, but how many times do you have to actually study in the week and weekdays? How does that work?
So,
and how do you fit that in?
Saturdays, when I first started, I was just finishing universities, signed up to Arabic Renaissance course. Yeah, the first time.
We are block booked Saturdays for how many years now?
Yeah, that's it. I think I started
4 years?
more than that. I started in 2018.
I demolished people's timetables. It's block booked for 5 years. I think 5 years between us.
But in my head,
Subhanallah.
just I think it was more of your compelling arguments, which is like, will you give up that time to study? And what's it for? You want to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's your purpose? What are we in this world to do? Are we in this world to go Turkish restaurants, go visit Turkey, and then go back to work to go back to Turkey again? That's what it feels
and then
like.
live in Turkey.
Yeah, and then
Move
live
to
in
Turkey,
Turkey,
yeah.
buy a house in Turkey. I love Turkey, but there's more to life than that. So for me, it was putting things in perspective. I did this little task with some of my students once that said, right, how many hours do you sleep in a day? And I said 8 hours on average. And when I first heard this, to hear that 30 years of your life you spend asleep, I was shocked. I was honestly like, what do you mean 30 years? 30 years is a lot of time, just spent on sleeping. And that started to shape that, you got 8 hours in the day sleeping, how many hours in the day eating. So it put into perspective that you have time to dedicate.
So Saturdays
for
wipe
me,
out.
I was like, let me give
Go
that
on.
day.
What about the weekdays? How do the weekdays fare for you?
So, alhamdulillah, I got into some teaching. We do global madrasa on Wednesdays. Well,
One of the days you
off
teach critical thinking
so
now,
I
right?
started off with Wednesdays,
Yeah.
Islamic studies. And now I'm doing critical thinking on the Thursday. And Saturdays also teaching the madrasa. So teaching the madrasa, come and study afterwards. And there was a point I was doing Saturdays and Sundays, which
That was militant.
now I think about, I'm like, how did I manage to do it? But
Alhamdulillah. No,
it's
that was commitment. I'll never forget those days.
it was
I'm
just
very
perspective,
appreciative of
though.
those days.
It was just that,
Driving down from Woking to here, hour and a half drive ish, every day for 9 in the morning start,
but I still think of those as like fond memories. Like even starting with QA1 and the
yeah,
start of the madrasa was like,
yeah.
that was our little baby starting
Yeah.
up. So loved
Subhanallah.
it. But you enjoy those things when you're dedicating and you're doing it for a reason. There's a greater purpose. You know, for
So
me,
that critical thing is on Thursday, right?
Thursdays, yeah.
So let's get this right. Thursday gone. I'm talking about for the average person looking in.
Yeah.
They would say Thursday's gone, Saturday's gone.
Yeah.
Studying.
Studying. So we got classes on Sunday.
What out of interest? What topic is that?
Sundays.
Which
Arabic,
way around is it? So it's Arabic on Sunday.
And then Monday.
So that's Sunday night gone, and then
Mondays we do. It's like a mixture, but we're on fiqh at the moment.
doing
so,
fiqh.
Yeah.
So that's Monday night gone.
And I think that's it. I think I'm free. I mean, there's other bits and bobs. Like
Yeah.
I'll go play football Wednesday after school.
Yeah.
You know.
No, but in terms of teaching and learning duties,
Yeah.
you've got like the whole of Saturday from morning to thingy. Then you have weekdays. Then you got Sunday night. Then you got Monday night. And I think you used to do private study as well. But I think now it's consolidated in these two studies with the sheikh on fiqh and Arabic. So the real interesting thing about that is most people looking in would think, oh man, that's too much for me, man. You know, life is over. So the real question is you're married, you know, mashallah, 2 kids, you know, one big one, one little one, and you've got full-time job. So do you ever think, why don't you think that the dawah and the learning is actually not enhancing your life, it's interfering with your life? That a lot of people will think, you know what, that seems like quite extreme. Why would I want to do all of those things? Why would I be learning Saturday all day, Sunday night, Monday night, teaching on Thursday? Why all of that? You know, you could spend all of that time, you know, doing something else.
You could. I remember when I was at university again, hearing the hadith of the 5 before 5.
Yeah.
You know, your health, your time, your wealth. You know, take advantage of them before they take advantage of you. And for me, that again, it was a perspective shift where I thought, can I, you know, I think about this. If I just died here on the spot, can I argue my case that I use my time wisely?
Yeah.
And I don't think I can. I still don't think I can. If I died on the spot, can I say my wealth that accumulated?
Where does that comfort come from, though? You know, like we all come from, you know, either Pakistani, Bangladeshi background. And I don't know all cultures, so we just comment on the ones that we experience generationally. Where does that culture come from where we just think, I'm all right, I'm going to go Jannah, I'm not too worried? Where does that culture, because you sound worried, right? You sound like concerned about how you're going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know? And subhanAllah, trust me, people who at your age, this flies against every single cell in their body of what they would be doing at your age. You're a qualified teacher, quite seasoned teacher now by the number of years you've got behind you now. But you're still relatively a young person, right? And that means that you could have easily said, well, where's the next side hustle? I'll do a tuition company. And then after a tuition company, I'll buy some shares in something, whatever. I'll have a side hustle upon a side hustle, because that's what people generally at this age are doing. Instead, you've put all this time in learning and so on. But where do you think the comfort comes from? You know, there's the false sense of comfort. You know, and I'll share a comment, a qawl. Yeah, they say that the one of the qawl of the Salaf was that they used to say that ما أردت نفسي على القرآن إلا عددت نفسي من الراسخين في النفاق. People used to say, you know this, yeah, this
We
one?
never exposed our souls to the Quran and found that we were in deep ignorance, right?
Deeply entrenched in nifaq. This is the Salaf. They'd say, I'd read the Quran and I would have this sense that I'm deeply entrenched in nifaq, right? That's how self-conscious they would be when they read their Lord and what He's done for them and their expectations upon them, right? And we know also Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, that when he heard that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was getting a list, so when he was getting a list for all the munafiqun, right? Because he didn't know, even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, These people were praying, fasting, and they were munafiqun. They were people who wanted the fay. Yeah, they wanted the war booty in Medina, so they just converted for the sake of it, right? Often from the Jewish tribes, right? They became Muslim and they were hiding one thing and another. I mean, munafiq with a capital meme, yeah? And so when the Prophet ﷺ had this information given to him, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu goes, minhu ana, minhu ana. Am I from the list? Now, either you have choices here, yeah? You have a choice to say that he's humble bragging. You're going to allege that against of these sahabas, yeah? Of a sahabi of his caliber. He's not humble bragging. So then he means it then. You know, you can't have it both ways, right? You either mean something or you don't, right? It shows his deep level of consciousness about his level of piety. He says, am I on the list? Look at his fear. He does not take it for granted. Yeah, that a pious person is a person that doesn't know they're pious. Do you see that they're unsure? You know, the Prophet ﷺ was doing sajda until his feet were swollen, isn't it? Yeah, and he said, why wouldn't I be an abdan shakura? Why wouldn't I be a grateful slave? So everybody has this level of consciousness for different reasons. The Prophet ﷺ in terms of his gratitude, the Sahaba in relation to their real motivations, number one. They also aren't 100% sure about whether their actions are accepted or not, because there's always da'af and naqs and problems in the way, in our prayers, in all of our worship. There's flaws, there's faults, isn't there? Right? And so they have this whole thing, and they know that because the Prophet said, you won't go to Jannah on just account of your deeds. And they said, even you, Ya Rasulullah? He said, even me. So when it comes to this, where does the false sense of security come within our communities?
You mentioned that poem at the top end of the podcast about how if you are going to shun the doctor, be patient in your pain. And if you're going to shun ilm, then be patient in your ignorance. And I wanted to ask you, but people aren't painful in their ignorance. They're not pained by their ignorance, are they? Because they're not aware of their ignorance. So I think I respectfully disagree that people don't have different levels of self-consciousness because people are not reflecting. I think I was listening to a podcast. So the West is, for example, we already know that when it comes to psychology or when it comes to counseling, the West has gone leaps and bounds ahead of the Islamic counseling, right?
Yeah, and obviously carried forward some problematic issues, but yeah, they have done. They have gone leaps and bounds.
In terms of the technology of counseling, they've technologically improved, and they've obviously got some of the bad elements of their ideology has also been built into that, right? But they've also realized we have a self-reflection problem. So now there's podcasts that's talking about things like, you need to stare at a wall for an hour, be alone. Maybe people are not alone enough. And this is oftentimes when my siblings are having problems and they're calling me up and we're discussing them, I'm saying, one of the things that came up recently was, why do you assume people are reflecting about the bad things they do to other people just as much as you do? Maybe you need to take a step back and realize people don't reflect on the things
people
they
aren't
do.
very reflective these days.
And the lack of reflection means that I think it's a combination of two things. I think it's a lack of reflection on one hand, but maybe the reason why you don't reflect that much, and it links into this idea of being addicted to dopamine as well, is the times, right? Capital T times. The times are just too fast paced. There are so many distractions, so many things that's pulling you here, there, everywhere. A phrase my father always used is being pulled by the nose. You're being pulled by the nose here, there, and everywhere. So if that's happening to you, then you don't have time, or you don't make time, because you say about overhauling your calendar or overhauling your time, your day, your plan and everything. If you don't put time in to reflect, then you're not going to realize or feel the pain of this ignorance. And if you never feel it, and some people, for example, they know if I open this Pandora's box, it's going to be painful. So they'll prefer to run away from the reflection.
I think there's some between where you agree or disagree. I think there's a bridge, and here's the bridge. Not taking advice, making an effort to learn the Deen, studying Islam, studying your religion, studying the way you should be, studying who you really are according to this religion, right? That is painful, and then obviously not doing that is also painful though. And that comes to that point where people often say, choose your pain. Yeah, choose your... So people who suffer from physical illnesses that don't go to the doctor, that scared me. That's the half-an-hour timer saying that we need to stop. Let me recompose myself to mention my point, right? And I'll ignore the timer. Now you know why I hate timers. Going back to the point, which is how the effort that it takes to develop yourself and learn is itself a lot of trouble. But we're talking about now, in the poem, it's about physical health, that you clearly, if you don't go to see the doctor, you could really get into in a bad state. But that is also true morally as well. Morally, I'm trying to convince you here, yeah? But morally, that's also true as well. And the reason why that is because when it says, وَاصْبِرْ لِجَهْلِكَ إِنْ جَفَوْتَ مُعَلِّمًا, be patient upon your ignorance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala often uses the phrase bil haqq, yeah, and there's lots of tafsir on this concept of what does it mean bil haqq, in truth. And what the scholars say in the tafsir is that what it means in truth, I'm just now apprehensive, this phone's going to go off again, that what it means by in terms of in truth is something that is true in terms of morally correct, meaning according to your Lord, this is true. This is you could call this your X. And your Y is that it is actually in a real world sense true as well. Like you could say 1 and 1 is true, and 1 potato plus another potato is 2 potatoes is true. So that shows that there's a real world import into that theory. Yeah. You see, so something is metaphysically and physically true. Bil haqq. And in Islam, we have this idea that the whole point of the religion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us this deen, is actually for our benefit. It actually benefits you in your life. And without, the way I've always, I'm going to give away one of my inner kind of philosophies, right? But people are of 2 types. Some people care about what's true and what's false. And some people care about what works and doesn't work. Do you see? Often what works is not true. It's not true. There are people, I'm honestly, maybe you don't know, or maybe you don't know, but and perhaps you do. There are people who have sought counseling, who have been taught pure kufr in that counseling environment, and they are measurably happier and overcome their problems in their life, but they've picked up some screwy ideas as well. Does that make sense? Yeah. Right? So it's not true, but it works. Do you see? This is also down to even, these recent things with Sheikh Yasir Qadi, with Sheikh Hatem. I know the conversation hasn't got the length. We want to discuss this in another podcast. We wanted to do another podcast on ummatics and khilafah. But this idea of right now a nation state, if it's working, yeah, it may not be true, but it's working. Do you see? Or like Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, there's some quote that's often attributed to him that a just state that is not a non-Muslim state is still a good thing because it's still just to its people than a nation that is oppressive, even if they've got Islam. Right? There's a quote that anyone can pull me up on it. I don't mind. I'll add it to the comment section. But they often quote this, that and so what we have to appreciate is that Islam is both true and it works. But here's the biggest problem for Muslims today is the reason why what true doesn't work and what is false works, often is the case, is because the way what is true is being understood and applied is incorrect. So it creates problems. And then people get dissatisfaction from Deen. They think it doesn't work. That's why they don't want to study. They think, I'm going to study, it's not going to solve my problem. How's this going to solve a problem with me? When I started out the family program, I used to have students in front of me looking at me so skeptically, arguing, pushing back, debating me in the classroom. I fully welcomed it because I knew where they came from. They came from an environment where it had no real faith that this religion works. Do you see? They accept it's true. If you say, is it a haqq? They'll say it's true, but it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, in the end of the day, do you do something that doesn't work? And I heard it in PMQ, not PMQs, question time recently. You know, where I can't remember which person on the panel was saying, you know, we have to care less about ideology and being right and care more about what works, right? This is where that culture comes from, that if something empirically builds a benefit, then why would your deen obstruct what you perceive beneficial? And yeah, and this pragmatist mindset. And as a result of that, what's happening is, and also, so you got this pragmatist mindset in the West, then you got a secondary layer. The secondary layer is that you have Islam that is true, obviously it's true, and then the way it's understood is wrong or skewed, and then the way it's applied is also wrong or skewed. So it causes harm. Living according to Islam causes harm. Does it really do that? No. It's because the way it's been applied or the way it's been understood. Either way. So a lot of people can listen to your Islamic lectures day and night. They can listen to you, me and you, right? But they're like, look man, there's a lot to say about what's true and what's false. But I care about what works and what doesn't work. That's what I care about. That's what most human beings who are not thinking within that kind of abstract, principled or ideological sense, most people are like, look man, if this makes my marriage work, then who cares where it comes from? I could watch, what's his name, Sadhguru. You know that guy who seems to think he has an answer for everything? Yeah? Yeah? This guy, Mr. Sadhguru. Right? People listen to Sadhguru and say, if it works, then I'll follow it. Why do I have to care? People listen to Gary Vee. People listen to Andrew Tate even before he was Muslim. Yeah? And then they follow the same thing after he's Muslim. Sorry. That means it can't be anything to do with him being Muslim. But anyway, that's another, isn't it? Right? But, you know, they follow people because they just want they want something that works. And I think one of the biggest things we have to do before we say that people haven't got time or they're too busy, although we're gonna attack that, is also address the fact that people don't have a lot of trust that Islam works, and that's often because it's not being applied correctly or it's not being understood correctly. Look, if you got given a way to do something by a physio and it was making your injury worse, would you carry on doing it? No. Do you see? You'd say, this isn't working for me. I'm the master of my own illness, and I'm telling you, this is actually increasing my pain levels. I'm less mobile, okay? It's causing me problems. So at some point, what happens with people is there is the laziness and excuses, which we want to discuss, but also they're disenfranchised. They lost a lot of faith in Islam solving their problems on a political level. You know, وَأَوَّلُهُنَّ نَقْتَ الْحُكُمْ وَآخِرُهُنَّ الصَّلَاةِ. They don't think the hukum of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and authority of Islam will solve anything until the point where they don't even agree or see the value in salah being central to their life. They don't see the benefit of either of those things. The Prophet said the knots of Islam will be untied one by one. First will be ruling and the last will be the prayer, right? So, you know, I wanted to kind of steel man the excuses before we knock them down. But what, like yourself, you're married, you've got full-time work, it's in consultancy, a profession I can pronounce, and you also have teaching duties, youth club duties, similar timetable in terms of learning, right? So how do you manage to fit all of that in? Why is it that you can fit it in and someone else is in the same life stage in their life as you? I'm too busy. Right now he's updating his LinkedIn profile right now as we speak. What would you say to him? What are you trying? Ustad Mumin mentioned it's his motivation that's different. That's one thing. I presume something similar, but also, you know, how do you manage to do all of those things without saying, you know, Islam is actually just too much. It takes too much time in my life, too much space.
I don't know. I mean, I know why I do it. I don't know.
Why do you do it?
I don't know. I could tell someone else. Like if I was sat with someone, I think it's a journey that everyone needs to go on to arrive at the right result for themselves. I do have this foreboding sense of death, which is a motivation for me to fix things. I do think reflection is a very important aspect to why I am the way I am. It wasn't until I started to reflect, it wasn't because, it was a combination of some grief, a realization, or I think it was more of a negative eureka moment that, wait, I'm kind of just stuck right now. I don't know. I'm not learning organically. I'm not learning for the sake of Islam. I'm learning for the sake of an argument, or I'm learning for the sake of giving some talk, but it's not actually, I'm not reinvesting it back into myself. So where it came from was a bit of some element of grief, some element of a realization that things were not developing the way that they should develop probably.
This is the source of the angst.
This is the angst, yeah. Since then, started with a bit of studying, then it started with more studying, or rather continued with more studying. Then I moved to London, then got married before I moved, and all these kinds of things. And I think I still wasn't very well organized. So there was a point where it was kind of a sit down and decide what's important. Because, for example, my wife would complain to me, you spend too much time doing other things and not with me. And that's a valid complaint. And I apologize to my wife.
We all hear that from wives at some point, and that's part of marital life.
But I don't anymore, by the way.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Right? And that's probably very much so to do with the fact that my wife's quite patient, or very patient. But it's also the fact that I had to realign my timetable to make things work. My timetable currently has changed because I've changed work recently. So I have actually, my work hours have slightly shifted. So I'm up at 8 a.m. Well, actually, I'm not up. I'm up at 8 a.m. for my work brain to switch on. But something that one of the brothers in the team, Munim, mentioned was he is up at a time that allows him to get stuff done before the work brain needs to switch on. So I've now adopted that as well. If I can be up at 6 o'clock and I've got my my morning admin stuff out of the way, I potentially have 1.5 hours to do my Quran reading, just pure reading. I have time to do, if I need to do stretching, so physical health, spiritual health, mental health, whatever things I need to do, I can dedicate some morning time to get those things done. Then 8 a.m. my work brain switches on, and you might struggle to get, anything else might struggle to fill that time, except for maybe I'll go for a lunch break or for a walk or listen to tafsir or something, or to more translation, tafsir I leave for other times. Finish work around 6 p.m., but more often it's around 8 p.m. instead. Then I need to rush home. On Wednesday, this youth club. So if I start from a Monday week, Monday we have our class. Tuesday, it's my kind of like my date night or family time with my wife.
Yeah.
And it alternates.
Monday's mine.
Yeah. So
After the hit that Monday gives me and my wife, we're like, we have to spend some time with each other. So Monday is like husband and wife day, evening, So and then that's on yours is on Tuesday, and then so Wednesday is.
I alternate between Tuesday and Thursday. So
we alternate between Monday and Tuesday.
We do a home thing one week, and we do an outdoor thing the other week, just to keep things fresh. Wednesday is youth club. Thursday is the other one. And for example, one of the things we'll do is my wife are both studying the same things, so we'll just sit and recap a lesson together, and we're spending time. So it's actually one day's date night, and the other night is a reflection/study night together, revision night, and then it'll just switch between those two. And that's it. I found that's a much more beneficial time spent together than just watching something, because like we're just two people sitting alone watching something, and we might laugh together on nudge or whatever, but there's no real benefit to the time we spend, and then it just leads to angst. Oh, we watched, we spent time together, we watched something. No, we didn't. We're just two people alone. We could just be sat with our own headphones, our own devices, and just be watching the same thing and laughing at the same time and looking at each other or whatever, but it's not beneficial. And that was one of the changes that we made, where it was a question of, is our time valuable together? No, it's not. Let's make our time valuable then. And that also started with making time. So I had to realize, the realizations were, and I'll get back to my weekly schedule, but it was like, my studies are important, my dawah and community work is important, and whatever form my dawah takes, as long as it's achieving a certain objective, then it's valuable, right? It's not I have to do a certain type of dawah to hit my KPI or hit my target. It's just
it's not a quota.
It's not a quota, but it's also not. There's no one fixed thing that's the right thing for me. If I can see that this dawah is adding value to the community or to the ummah or to my family even, right? Then that's fine. I'll do that. if I'm doing an Arabic trench session and one person comes every week, then I'll be there, and if no one comes, guess what? I'm just gonna recap the class by myself, and I'll have a whiteboard recording, and anyone who later on can watch it. So Thursdays will be our revision / date night. Fridays is my personal time, so that's where I will do my reflection. That's where I will look forward to the weekend and do my planning for that. Saturday I teach at my own madrasa from 11 to 2, and then I'm here for the rest of Saturday, as you know.
Meetings, podcasts, everything. Yeah.
Also class, right, as well, naturally.
And class, yeah.
Playing with the babies. That's my Saturday catharsis.
You swing around a child.
Absolutely. Sundays then is teaching from 9 to 12.
Yeah.
Then we have futur after that, so that runs for about another hour. Then I go to a local cafe, and I'm doing a bit of a cafe tour at the moment, and I do my lesson planning for the following Sunday. Because, like I mentioned, if I don't start my lesson planning for this thing that I'm learning as I go, like doubts and epistemologies and ontologies and all this kind of fancy stuff, then I'm not going to be able to start building the concepts over the course of the week. So that's why I do in the Sunday, after futur on Sunday, that's what I do. And then I'll go home, try to get some relaxation time in. I do a lot. I'm cycling around now, so that's how my exercise is stacked on top of my transport.
I've noticed what you've mentioned is a lot of integration.
Yeah.
So you have spent some time with your wife because you studied with her.
Yeah.
Then that doubles up as, okay, there's this date night, couples night, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
There's that. Then after that, you've got Sunday afternoons or Sunday evenings.
Yeah.
I think, similarly with me, I've got our time is on Monday. Tuesday is usually take my son to jiu-jitsu, which means that I get to walk and get exercise, catch up with all my phone calls, speak to whoever I need to speak to. And then on Wednesday, I have father and my other two sons' day. So there's a day dedicated to my wife. There's a day dedicated to my one son, my oldest son. Then there's a day dedicated to my two boys. And then on Thursday, it's called Abi and Maliha Day. So it's me and my daughter, right? So that's all 4 kids covered by then. And if for whatever reason I can't do Thursday, then we have this thing called, everything with girls is but you give the boy a little bit more. In my family, even her name is a little more names, more anything. So if Thursday I can't spend a lot of time, then she also has father and daughter day on Sunday afternoon after madrasa. So she gets 2 slots in the week. And the idea is everybody gets a portion of time. Now, within that time, everyone's interacting with different tasks in the family. But these are times that are, if you don't make that dedicated time, what will happen is you have actually, I'm not sure how to say it, but you have poor quality time. Yeah? Which means when you have poor quality time, you have to have quantity. And when you have quantity, that's when you don't have any time to learn the deen. You see, so a lot of people are having low quality time. And as a result of that, they don't have time for the deen. And I found that once you integrate, so I'm running a youth club effectively with the brothers, right? Although I'm not like central to it, but I come, I give some classes. I've got my kids there. They also learn to do khidmah and they learn to help out. I just feel that a lot of people try to live their whole life within just one bubble. So some people try to live in the bubble of being as part of an ummah. Some people live within and they neglect their family and their community. Other people just live within the bubble of their personal development and they don't know what goes on with the ummah outside of that bubble. And what was interesting always to me was that Islam traverses through all of those, pops all those bubbles. Islam traverses through all of those kind of modes of being, the social, communal, familial, whatever. And so if you just do all the things that the Sharia asks you to do, all the things that the Sharia details for you to do, then you will meet all the things you ever wanted to do in your life. I think this is something that a lot of people don't understand. Something people don't understand is that when you follow Islam, it's a bit like this. I'll try to use food. Food is always a good example because people get food these days. We're all experts of food. If you eat a varied diet, with what you eat has variety, different vegetables, different fruits, different, meats, fish sometimes, poultry sometimes, whatever. If you have that sort of, you don't need a nutritionist. You don't need a nutritionist.
Yeah, I agree.
If you eat within the right portion and you have a varied diet, you don't need a nutritionist. You don't know what you're getting, your omega this and your niacin, whatever that, and your vitamin B2, 5, 7. You don't need any of that because when you have a good nutrition, it covers all of the bases without you knowing. One day you'll have a bit of fish. That's enough. You don't need to eat fish 7 times a day and get mercury poisoning or whatever, right? You can just vary your diet and within a healthy kind of setup. And then what will happen is you will hit every single nutritional need. You do not need to have pills and tablets necessarily if you have a nutritious diet. And that's exactly what Islam is. Islam will hit your needs to feel satisfied, to be happy, to not feel neglected, to not feel empty, to not feel bored, to not have problems with your spouse. But a lot of people think the way I can fix the problems with my spouse is by focusing just on my spouse. Actually, focusing on the community can help your spouse. One of the things that has always united my family is our love for others, actually. Our humanity and our love for others has fed back into the household and the love we have for each other. Because that's a more purer love. That's a higher love. A love that makes sense. Do you see? Not a selfish, inward-looking love. Do you see?
The flavor of that love is limited if it's just selfish.
Do you see? And I'll be honest with you, a lot of marriages that I counsel is because they love each other too much or whatever you want to call it. There's too much, wanting to spend every single moment with each other. So I say, why are you miserable? Why are we miserable? I say, because you spend every single moment with each other. If my wife goes out to see her in-laws, my in-laws, her mum and dad, for I think 20 years she's been going back and forth. Every weekend she gets to go and see them. She gets to sit with a little cardigan and have a cup of tea and sit with her dad and just talk about just whatever and with her sisters or whatever. I'm happy because she comes back with a spring in her step, like renewed, different kind of angles at looking at things and saying things in different ways because of you've been in different environments. But if that person only knows you and you know them, you've heard everything they have to say in the world within about a few years and every way of saying it as well, to the point it's just there's something kind of monotony. But what actually helps is the fact that, if you're helping the ummah, I'm saying this is an indirect benefit. I'm not saying, go and just do this, right? But it's indirect benefit because what happens is when she runs a women's center. There's a lovely sister called Aisha. She's the counselor for the Coffee with the Counselor session for the Merin Nisa Women's Center that my wife runs. My wife is sitting there nodding away, yes, this is very good for you sisters. But she always comes home and says, this was so beneficial for me. This was wicked. Because you're not going to get this from anywhere else. So she's benefiting from this. Do you understand? She's actually, now if it was just the modern couple these days, it doesn't matter if you wear niqab. It doesn't matter if you have a big beard. Just two people, just us together walking through shopping centers in Dubai, yeah? Right? Honestly, that just is so corny and it's so, I don't know how to describe it. It's just, shallow, honestly. It's just shallow. And what you realize is that when that person has that relationship with their ummah, for example, you think a love for the ummah doesn't impact the love for your spouse and your wife? Isn't the actual value of your wife the fact that she's a Muslim connected to the ummah as well? Isn't that a layer of love that she's a Muslim? Isn't it a layer of love that she's connected to this ummah? So there's various layers that actually the answer for, I got all these funny ways of saying things, but I always say to you guys, the answer isn't in the room. You should always ask yourself, sometimes we're talking, the answer isn't in the room. You've got 5 guys saying how we're going to do something. None of us have trained to do X. But the answer isn't in the room. Maybe we should stop meeting, and go and train up and meet again and reconvene. And I've always felt that a lot of people don't answer. They're arguing with their spouse, but the answer isn't in the room. The answer is out there. You know, the answer is actually developing your knowledge. If you want to help your marriage, you need to leave her and learn. If you want to, you know, develop and have children, it's not just about spending time with them. It's also gaining knowledge so you have something to impart. But the excuses which was the main thing, and I think we've been very gentle, right? But what I found, and I was going to throw it back to you guys and then sort of close this podcast, is it tends to be a lot of Muslims don't understand the ikhtanim khamsa qabla khamsin. They don't understand this hadith of taking advantage of 5 before 5. What they do is actually, instead of taking advantage of taking those 5 things, what are they? Health, wealth, youth, life, and time. What they do is they are not ikhtanim is from the ghanima, yeah, really exploiting something, yeah. I find that the health exploits them the other way around. It's what you call reverse flow. Their health exploits them, their youth exploits them, their wealth exploits them, their good health exploits them, and their free time exploits them. Because
that's one's mind, though. Yeah, your mind before you lose it.
Is it your sanity before you use it? Subhanallah. And I found what happens is because we vegetate and we actually damage the mind because of, we've talked about it before, amusing ourselves to death. We don't actually use the blessings and exploit them for what the Prophet said. The Prophet ﷺ said is exploit these 5 before these 5. But we're usually exploited by these 5. Do you see? That our job, our youth, our wealth, our free time, our mental space are usually wasted and we therefore become exploited by the very things that Allah has blessed us with. And that's why you get this crazy dichotomy where this world that I will never understand, where someone will say, I can't study because I don't have time. But if you meet that's because he's making money now. He has money, but he's busy earning money. But if you go to that person when he's not working, he now has time, but not as much money. So he'll say at that point, I don't have money. So throughout your whole life, I don't have time, I don't have money. I don't have time, I don't have money. It's just your whole life is just full of, it's a litany of excuses that go through your life that you're just forever you're going to say you're busy. And honestly, I'll mention this to the viewers. This is a real fear that you should have. That means that you're not wanted. Do you know that? There could be a great possibility that this is called a form of bu'ud, a form of what the scholars describe as spiritual distancing, meaning the reason why you're always busy, and there's hadith related to this as well, is because actually Allah knows you don't want Him, so He doesn't want you. So He keep you busy, keep you at bay. You don't want me, so I don't want you. It's in the Quran, it's the concept of istidraj, another concept of Allah keeping you busy. You don't want me, that's fine, I'll keep you busy with this. I'll make you think day and night about your dunya. Never will you actually decide to come and learn. And not only will you have that trauma, you'll inject that trauma into your children, and all they worry about is their grades and whether they keep up with their football training, and they're not worried about serving the ummah. They're not worried about learning the Deen. They're not worried about what's happening really in Gaza. None of these things, all of these things are an afterthought. And the reason why that is because we have this perpetual chain of I'm too busy, I don't have any money. I'm too busy, I don't have any money. And here's the problem though. When they have money, they use their time up spending that money on things that make them busy. And when they don't have money, they spend all their free time trying to make themselves busy with money. So if you're trying to always make yourself busy with money, and then when you get money, you're always you're busied by the money in whatever it is, Netflix and eating out and traveling and doing all of those things. I personally don't understand the whole point. I'll end inshallah as I started, which is that everything you could ever want, you will get if you follow the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, you would think that because me and my wife spent 10 years studying, that means we never had time to go on holiday. But we went Hajj, we went Umrah I think 3 times, we went Tunisia, we went Turkey, we went Morocco. You know, we traveled more than we ever traveled because Allah took us there. Every place we went to Turkey. Every place we went, we were studying, learning, meeting shuyukh, getting ijazat and this and that. What do you think happened after the classes finished? Well, we just carried on doing dhikr. Oh, we went and found tagines and went at food and rode a camel and did all the kind of cliched sort of holiday-ish things that you can do. You see, that's what Sheikh Akram always used to say. He says, you do not buy a cow for the manure, you buy it for the milk. And I used to understood that distinctly, like what that meant. It meant that buy it for the milk, you don't have to worry about manure. I've never seen a cow not be able to produce you manure, right? So worry about the milk, worry about everything else. The manure is an afterthought. So the things that you want in life, they will come running to you. And there's many hadith related to that as well. They will come running to you if you chase Allah. But if you chase the dunya, yeah, it will be like salt water in your mouth. It will be sand in your mouth. You not only will you not be satiated, you will not have deen. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to, all this stuff about I'm busy, I'm doing this and all of that. That's because you have kegged your life up with patterns of behavior that you can now no longer escape. Do you see? So what advice would you give someone who constantly make excuses to not want to develop themselves and their families? And the same question goes to you after.
I still think the biggest problem is that people don't reflect enough. That saying, you said it was a qawl, or the saying of the Salaf was that we exposed ourselves to the Quran and found ourselves to be in deep nifaq. That means that they were reading and reflecting.
Absolutely.
And therefore they were seeing the problems. So reflection for me is the biggest way to realize where there are serious issues. And by the way, for example, I can go through 3 weeks of being somewhat negligent or very negligent, and it's not until I sit down and face my actions over the last 3 weeks to realize,
exactly,
okay, actually I've not prioritized the things that I say are important. So my advice would be the same that we gave to the youth club 2 weeks ago. If everything is important, then nothing is important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or if it's like there's a quite famous one: if you stand for nothing, you will
fall for everything. Absolutely.
So if you don't value these 5 things, not only will they take you for a ride, but everything will take you for a ride. So I would say reflection is one thing, and just sit down, reflect, but also just sit down and look at your week and realize that there probably is time you can make if you start having better quality use of time, and therefore you can invest time into yourself. And I think the reflection will be the realization that you're not giving time to the right things. Then organizing your calendar will show you where you have availability, and then you can fill that availability with valuable things. And if you need to move things around, if I need to move if something, like for example, there's a counseling course coming up, and that's on Tuesdays, for example.
Yeah.
That means my Tuesday date night now needs to shift somewhere.
Yep.
I need to review my calendar, right?
Come across problems.
Yeah, no, not really. I just need to go and re-engineer the calendar. So, for example, Sundays I finish futua, and then the only thing in the evening is my class with Ustad Ahmed, right? So that means I have time on Sunday to fit that in. But then my wife finishes teaching at our madrasa at 2 p.m. She's tired. She doesn't want to do anything. She's like, I don't know you, and she wants to do her own thing, for example. So now I need to rejig my calendar to make things work. But at least I have a starting point where I know there is space to move into. So it would be reflection, and then reconfiguration. And if I have another hour at some point, I'll find one and I'll give it to him.
I'll say before I pass it over that if you don't live in a Muslim society, and there's no Muslim society in the world at the moment, the only way out of the rat race is reflection. I totally agree with you. The only way out of a rat race from what everybody else is doing is to reflect and to actually think for yourself and evaluate that, look, if I'm going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't matter if the whole planet is doing something. You know, there are periods of time, mentioned, in Revelation that, whole people are going to go enter wholesale into Jahannam. Yeah, there's going to be, there's even a hadith where there will be people praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the mosque, and there's not even one person with iman in the whole mosque, right? There are many narrations that at the end of times, the various things will appear in our communities. There will be someone who is a Muslim and then he wakes up an unbeliever. So the fact is in these sorts of times, we need to think of we need to reflect on how am I going to answer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And only you know personally whether you're doing your best. Okay? Everyone around could pat you on the back and say, you're doing too much even, right? But only you deep down know whether you're making an effort or not. That's where ikhlas, I think, sincerity is a real big player in reflection. You know, sincerity and in reflection.
And if
Sincere reflection.
Agreed. And if I just had two quick things. So,
Sure.
for example, doing dawah to the community, you're not going to start shouting at the community if they have some weird opinion, right? Or if they don't do what you want. Like at the youth club, if the kids are not doing what we need them to do, we're not going to start shouting at them. An indirect benefit of doing dawah to the masses or to the community, right? What's the reverse of mass, right? The minimums or whatever. When I go home and my wife isn't doing what I expect her to do, or if you have children and they're not doing what you expect them to do, they are like, you point you mentioned about that your love for the ummah, it has a different flavor for your family then, right? Your family is part of the ummah.
Exactly.
So treat them with this level of respect, or treat them with the fear of being found out that you're a bit of a psychopath. If I treat the ummah let's pretend I shout at my wife when she does anything wrong, and then I go and shout at the ummah all the time. Then people say, watch out with this guy, it's a bit of a crackpot, right? So there's like, if you're not doing dawah to the community now, just go and do it. And there's other benefits, right? If you're hard on your luck when it comes to money, or you lose your job, go donate. You don't see the benefits, but the benefits are there. That's one thing. I think the second thing is, and I'm worried now that I've forgotten it, because I spoke on that previous one for too long. So one excuse I hear a lot is, and personally I've said it to myself as well, I've already studied it. I've already done Letters to Light. Why do I need to do the family program? I'm quite skeptical against myself, and I count myself and say, well, what the hell else are you going to do in that time? To be quite frank, if I'm not studying a family program, even if it's like, for example, it might be something in Arabic that I've studied before, being in a learning environment is more productive and more quality use of time than not being.
I never understood that. Do you know why? I've studied the same topics, same books several times.
Yeah.
I've never not come away with something new or better reflection or more consolidation. And I think that's the attitude I've always had. And look, I get reward for that. I don't get reward for the thing I was going to do to muck around or waste my time or whatever.
Yeah.
For me, this is, I think, one of the things. Like, you have to, not only do you have to sincerely reflect, you have to think about, where is the source of my reward during that whole week? You know, if I'm not doing something like this.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
you know, my son recently just finished his GCSEs, right? So obviously the conversation about how many A-levels, degree, Islamic studies, how to do all of those things. And really simply, we're going to have a family sit down and discuss it nicely, talk about all the different angles and advantages and benefits. But really, I gave him a criteria, right? I gave him a criterion that, look, you need to have a wider vision, okay, of I'm a man of this ummah, and how am I going to help the ummah and develop my knowledge and my ibadah and all of those things, right? So how am I going to spread Islam all across the world? That's my wider vision, right? And within that, there is an absolute thing about career path, how many A-levels, which job that lines up, which career that lines up, no problem. But you have to have this overall framework, right? This wider vision, and then you have the parts. A lot of people, the whole vision of life, the purpose of life is education, job, career.
The scope is too narrow.
The scope is too narrow. And that's the reason why if you don't start trying to interact with the world correctly, the world will interact with you incorrectly. It will deal with you. It will get to you. It will get to your family. It will get to your kids. It will get to your wife. It will get to all of you. So there is there's the phrase from Shawshank Redemption about get busy living or get busy dying. For a Muslim, getting busy living is actually learning the deen and serving the ummah. So that should be your wider aim. And then after the wider aim, you can have inside that, you can have definitely all sorts of aspirations and things you want to achieve. But you have to understand that you have to have a vision. Without a vision, all you're going to do is just chase your tail around career and job and all of those things, right? And so like, what advice would you yourself give to
To summarize,
who-
in true teacher fashion,
yeah,
I've got like 3 P's.
the 3 Ps?
So I'd start with purpose.
Yeah.
Like, you need to know your purpose. And as Muslims, we say we know our purpose, but
Mm.
are you following that purpose? If we're saying we're in this world for a short amount of time, it's temporary, but our hereafter is forever, how much time are we prioritizing for those things? And that's my second P, prioritizing. It's to do with, if your akhirah is forever, well, what are you doing for it? Because if you're not
Absolutely.
doing a lot, how are you expecting to
If you're
get
not
it?
prioritizing it, you're not prioritizing akhirah.
That's it. And the last P is perspective of, everything together. You've got your akhirah, it's forever. Your dunya, temporary. And how we bridge that from the dunya to the akhirah is what we're doing. How are you spending your time? And my biggest thing, something I heard, and it was like a bit of a reflection. People say they don't have time. Someone said, go look at your screen time. That'll tell you. If
Yeah,
you've got time.
absolutely.
And
Imam Shafi was the first in that. That's what the poem says. If you were to ask time, time would literally rebuke you. Say, you don't have time? Let me just check. Sorry. 4 hours looking at different types of smash burgers and, and ASMR, someone, playing with, I don't know, something with plasticine or something, or, 3-4 hours, or, if you look at someone's screen time throughout the whole week, you will know. And I think that is probably, perspective is probably the key here, that we will tell every single person who's watching this podcast to understand one thing very, very clearly. When you provide excuses to people that they don't have enough information to disprove it, that doesn't mean it's no longer an excuse. A lot of people, they make excuses to people. Like if someone said to me, I'm too busy, I have this funny way about me in my life of just taking what people say. I've not got the time in my life to start investigating. I'm going to hide in a tree with the binoculars, right? So what's going to happen is you say you're busy and I'm going to go, probably is. But when you say that and you got 20 hours screen time on this and you got so much wastage in your life. Yeah, you live in a first world country. You have majority of things automated to such an extent, right? With this AI now and everything, everything's moving so fast in being automated and being done for you. And all you do is manage automation, right? When you're in an age like that, for you to say, I don't have any time, yeah, it's like the lie of the century. And the problem is that though the person can't disprove that because they don't watch every aspect of your life, one person definitely knows, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knows, the lie that you tell other people about being too busy. And also, you know, because you watch your life through your eyes, don't you? And you see what you're doing. And when you say you're too busy and so on, to be honest with you, when you talk to people who get a lot of things done, right, they'll tell you they think they're wasting their time in certain places. I like managers, but me personally, I like to think I think I am a busy person. I don't like to think. I wish I was, I could relax more. But I cut down sleep to get certain things done, right? I mean, when I cut down sleep, not for one night, not a one-nighter. I mean, I might go for a month with lack of sleep, right? Where I'll just do less sleep, get more done, and then have a real crash on the Sunday night sleep and wake up refreshed on Monday and then do it all over again.
There's a willingness to make some sacrifices though. isn't
Yeah.
there? And I think that's maybe part of what's lacking with some people is they don't want to do that. They'd
Yeah.
rather just stick with what they've got. So
Yeah.
when it comes to time, it's busy because I don't want to sacrifice of my other things.
Well,
that
of
I
course.
enjoy.
Imagine you were to do the same thing with dieting again. Imagine someone offered you a salad, right? And what you did is you ate all these gatos and burgers and food and fries and everything. Who's got any space for salad after that? If you're bloated with all the food in the world, how are you going to have space for healthy food? There's no space for healthy food, Do you see? Well, ironically, if you are a person who, and people give this health advice all the time, if you had eaten healthy food, filling food in the day already, you barely have any space for unhealthy food. You don't feel like it. Do you see? Right? If you eat food that has a lot of quantity, a lot of fiber, low calorie, doesn't have many calories and is, filling, right? Often is the case, you just don't have the space to eat something else. So if you want to make space for healthy life, you actually have to make the space for healthy food, right? And then when you make space for healthy food, you'll realize you have less of an appetite. But when you're hungry and you want to make bad decisions, the chances are you're going to eat bad food, right? And then there's no point eating that salad after, my friend. Do you see? There's no point eating that because that is on top of everything else. And that's why the scholars, they have a beautiful phrase. They call it takhliya qabla tahliya. Yeah? Takhliya qabla tahliya. Meaning you have to gut out and remove things if you want good things to take their place. I personally think that anything I've achieved in my life was nothing to do with me actively seeking good things. I just think I just removed the bad things. As soon as I removed the bad things, somehow all the good stuff just came. And I think that in this modern kind of age, it's about what you don't do, what you say no to, what you cut out is everything. In an age of abundance, what you cut out is the real skill. And I found that when I cut things out, naturally good things just come in. Naturally. I don't have to seek. Like if you switch all the TVs off in the house, all the boys run off and start reading books in my house. You see? So if you switch things off, people naturally gravitate towards what's good for them. But if you, for example, train in a gym and then you have a nice meal, that meal feels so rewarding. But if you ate the meal, you don't want to go gym. Isn't it? So it's all about putting in the hard work. And a lot of people, what they're doing is that because they're enjoying too much, they don't feel like they can get out of that to go into discomfort. You see? So there is a thing where, khalif nafsak, you have to go against your nafs sometimes. You have to differ with your nafs, not give it and remember, nafs has a higher part and a lower part. So that lower nafs, you've got to stop giving it if you want the higher nafs to have the room to expand, to grow, to be nurtured. It can't happen if the lower nafs is constantly being satiated and satisfied. And does that make sense? So clean out your wardrobe, clean out your life, and good things will make space. And if you feel you don't have time for ibadah, time for learning, time for helping the ummah, look to other people, modern examples. Look to people who do have the time while they do everything else. There are people who are doing everything you're doing: career, job, children, dealing with elderly parents. They're doing all of those things and they're doing those things. So how is it that if it was impossible, how are they doing it? The reason is not because of those challenges, it's because of how we use our spare time. We cannot continue to just say, when I don't have a job, I don't have the money. And then when I have a job, I have the money, I don't have the time. And just the whole life until, ألهاكم التكاثر حتى زرتم المقابر. That all of you are excited and reveling, in takathur, in increasing the material aspects of your life, whatever it is. Yeah, could be increasing the number of wives. It could be increasing number of houses you own. It could be increasing number of cars you own, or it could be just increasing the money in your bank. ألهاكم التكاثر حتى زرتم المقابر, until you all go and visit your graves. Then you're going to realize that on the edge of your grave will be left everything you chased, and the only thing that will keep you company in your grave is your a'mal, whether it's your ilm or it's your amal. They say al-ilmu walid wal-amalu mawlud. Yeah, they say that knowledge is the parent and actions are its offspring. You see, so you can't really have offspring without parents. There's no immaculate conception in learning the deen, right? Which means that you have to learn the deen if you want to be able to offer it to other solutions to other people. While at the same time, you can't learn the deen and be impotent of action. You have to go out there and you have to work hard with that knowledge in helping as many people as you can. People don't understand that isn't That isn't a specially good thing to do. That is the religion itself. The religion itself is making time for your purpose in life. You know, and if you're not making time for your purpose in life, I think all of us know from our collective life experience that life has wonderful, interesting ways of getting you into a headlock and a leg lock and a wrist lock equivalent, right? It'll get you twisted up in so many ways. Yeah. This dunya can get you twisted up in dunya can just get you possessed. You know, people talk about you needing a raqi, yeah? The biggest ruqya we need is from materialism and consumerism. You know, we're even the ones who consider themselves religious, you know, with beards and turbans and hijabs and niqabs. The materialism and consumerism is so high that no one has time to learn the deen. You know, it's constantly chasing either money, and that's the concept of financially free. You know, people chase money to be free. Do you see? And then when they're free, all they do is they use their time to chase further money. So it's just a cycle of behavior that needs to break. And I think your comment was probably most apt in this, that the only way to break that cycle is reflection. Reflection is the only interruption, and prioritization as well. You know, those are the only things that are really going to break you out of that cycle. Otherwise, every day will look the same. Jazakumullahu khair. I actually really benefited from hearing about your perspectives and what motivates yourselves. I actually got to know you guys a bit better from what motivates you, what makes you think, what makes you tick. And Jazakumullahu khair for all the brothers and sisters who watch this podcast. Please remember to do, you know, the thing that people say all the time, you know, share, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Please go and do all of that. Share it within your social media. Because that will make us want to do more. Let's be honest, we're human beings, right? We need to know that you like the content and that this is valuable and that this is motivating you, more importantly, to get up and want to do something. I really hope our podcasts aren't something that make you relax and do nothing, but they actually make you want to get up and want to fight, want to learn, want to help people, want to serve people, want to improve your family, want to build your children correctly. I hope it motivates you to want to get up and do some action. Jazakumullahu khair. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.